Hi friends, I'm Phil, the Barista Coffee Dude with baristacoffeelife.com. Thanks for tuning in today. Super excited because I'm working on my garage. There's a little corner that I'm about to dedicate as the Barista Coffee Life corner. And from there, I'll be able to have a really cool backdrop and some props and this table. It's gonna be awesome. I'll be able to convey information more consistently and communicate it better. So super excited about that. It's something in the works, so stay tuned. But moving on, what I wanted to talk about today, love this topic. What is espresso? So there's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to what is espresso. I kind of want to hit on it briefly, or as briefly as I can. It's a fun topic. It's something that most coffee people who understand it can talk for hours on. So if you find that person, talk to them. It's awesome. So what is espresso? There's kind of two ways that you can look at espresso. You have espresso as the brew method, and then you have espresso as the roast. Now, the first thing I'm going to talk about is espresso as the roast. Don't quote me on this because it's been years since I've studied it. But from what I understand, the Italian style of espresso, when it comes to a roast, it's a lot darker than what we in America are used to. Additionally, the Italians, and this is the part don't quote me on, they roast traditionally 12 different coffees individually, then blend them all together. By doing that, the Italians are able to create that really dynamic and that really complex flavor profile that espresso has. Now, we in America, we tend to be a little lazy. We're lazy when it comes to coffee in a lot of respects. We're definitely lazy when it comes to cooking and taking French cooking methods and cutting corners and making shortcuts. That's why American food is way simpler than French cuisine. Likewise, American coffee is way simpler than Italian coffee. In America, most espressos, blends that you're going to find, they're typically going to be about 3 beans or 4 beans maximum. A lot of what I see, you're going to have a really just base coffee, such as a Brazil, and that'll make up anywhere from 40 to 60% of the blend in a lot of cases. And then the other kind of nuances like a citric or a sweet or whatever it is, that's going to be an additional like 20% and 20% or 10% and 30%, something like that. So in America, that's more how espresso roasts are formulated. A lot of times the beans are all roasted together in one giant batch. Personally, I always like roasting them separately and then blending them post-roast. That is kind of a story for another day. It's a whole other topic in and of itself. But that is more the American approach to espresso is let's just take 3 coffees, 2 coffees, 1 coffee, single origin coffee. Let's just roast it and then package it, send it off. Whereas the Italians tend to take a lot more time formulating their blend, if you will. Now, the roast itself, when roasting for espresso, it tends to be a little bit of a different roast. Either the time is a little bit longer or the temperature goes a little bit higher. The reason that is, the taste of espresso is heightened. Everything is accentuated from the acidity to the body to like chocolate notes, caramel notes, all those things end up getting compressed. And regarding acidity in particular, as a roast temperature goes higher and higher, different acidic components end up getting burnt off. So like your citric acid and your malic acids are going to be burnt off at a lower temperature. So we'll just say it's 400 degrees. So once you start getting past that temperature, once you get like the 410 degree range, 415 degree range, something like that, then you've burned off or altered those acids and they're no longer present. So like your lemony and your orangey and your citric acids are going to be bypassed in exchange for like caramels and chocolates and so forth. The reason that's important is because of that compressed flavor, that heightened taste. You don't want to get like, wow, of a whole bunch of lemon in your face, right? Or most people don't. So an espresso roast is going to be a little bit darker, so it can have a chance to develop beyond those highly acidic perceived acids. Hope that makes sense. So that's just really briefly touching on espresso. Like, what is espresso as the roast? Now, what is espresso regarding the coffee or the beverage itself? So the brew method is a huge difference when it comes to brewing regular coffee versus brewing espresso. When it comes to brewing espresso, all of the same dynamics, all of the same nuances still apply. What I mean by that is your grind, your dose, your tamp, your water temperature, the time of the brew, those all account for how the end espresso will taste. Everything's compressed though, because you're only brewing an espresso beverage in about 25 to 30 seconds. If you're using like a Senesso or a Slayer, you might be looking at, say, 45 seconds for the brew. But that is in comparison to like this Chemex, which takes about 4.5 minutes to brew. So all the same principles when it comes to brewing coffee are exactly the same when it comes to brewing espresso. Everything's just compressed. If your grind is off, like if your grind is too fine, the bitter is going to be super prominent. If the grind is, or say the dose is too shallow or too low, then that flavor weakness, that diluted, is going to be highly noticeable. So that's the thing you have to watch out for with espresso. It has to be extremely precise, both on the roasting side, because that will translate into the brewing side. Now, espresso is also concentrated. What do I mean by that? Well, when you brew a 12-ounce cup of coffee, you're using somewhere around 20 to maybe 24, 25 grams. When you're brewing a 2-ounce beverage of espresso, you're using roughly 20, 21 grams of espresso coffee. So your concentration is going to be about a 1-to-2 ratio regarding espresso versus maybe a 1-to-15, 1-to-17 ratio when it comes to regular coffee. Now, another very important aspect of espresso is the crema. Crema is the foam that forms on top of the espresso beverage. And so what is crema? What is crema in espresso? In a regular cup of coffee, you smell the aromas. What you smell, it's called a volatile aroma. And regarding espresso, those volatile aromas, because the beverage is brewed under pressure, those volatile aromas get trapped within kind of an oil and water complex. It's called a oil and water emulsion. So all of those aromas end up getting caught, which means when you taste an espresso beverage, you're actually tasting the aromas as opposed to smelling the aromas. Now, there's some really cool physiological aspects when it comes to that. Just touching on it briefly, kind of like the neurogastronomy of it. When you smell something, your olfactory nerve, it has receptors that are at the top of your sinus. Those receptors are actually neurotransmitters. Now, your taste buds, those actually have kind of like ion channels that turn on and off, or like proteins will go back and forth. And so the way that your olfactory system perceives is completely different physiologically than how your taste buds perceive. With your olfactory system, the sense gets shot to the back of your brain through the cranial nerve 1, or CN1, and your brain will interpret that neurological signal and that electrical signal as like it'll translate a memory, or it'll, if it's smoke, it'll trigger a parasympathetic response, which means like your adrenaline will kick up and you'll run into the kitchen, you'll see what's burning in the oven. So that is actually what happens when it comes to your olfactory system. And it triggers memories, it triggers neurological responses, it triggers actions. Regarding your taste buds, that triggers more of just like general taste. It'll trigger like citric, and not necessarily like orange from lime though, or lemon from lime. That's more what your olfactory does. So your taste perception regarding espresso and the neurological response derived from that is completely different than a regular cup of coffee where you're smelling the aromas versus tasting the aromas in espresso. Anyway, that's your free physiology lesson for the day. All right, so back to espresso. What is espresso? It's brewed under pressure. Now, the pressure it's brewed under is 9 bars of pressure. That's sort of the standard accepted pressure. What does that mean? So 1 bar of pressure is the atmospheric pressure at sea level of a square inch. So that's 14.7 psi, or pounds per square inch. That is basically the weight of all of the air that gravity is pulling on you at sea level. Now, 9 bars of pressure, just take 14.7 times 9. You end up with about 133 psi. What that does, that actually forms that crema, which is pretty dang cool. It's that pressure that is actually creating the oil and water emulsion. It's that pressure that is trapping the gases, and that essentially is what makes espresso what it is the pressure creates the crema, which alters the taste, which physiologically your body is going to interpret that differently, and it's awesome. So one thing I just want to touch on, why 9 bars? Well, for a long time, we haven't had electricity, but there's still espresso before electricity. The way those machines work, there's a boiler and basically like a flame or a heating source for the boiler. There's a lever that was pulled. That lever had a spring inside there, and even lever machines today still operate on the same principle. That spring gets depressed, and then when the lever is lifted back up, it starts exerting pressure onto the coffee. Because the spring is at its highest action potential when it's most compressed, the pressure exerted is about 12 bars of pressure. Quick math, about 175 pounds per square inch. So you pull the lever down, the pressure starts at about 12 bars of pressure. As the spring is depressed, as the shot is pulling, because room is being made in the chamber, the spring is opening up. That spring will gradually go from 12 bars, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, and by the time it ends, you're looking at about 6 bars of pressure, or roughly 90 pounds per square inch. So 9 bars is what you find on modern day electrically driven espresso machines. And the reason they came up with 9 bars, 12, 6, 9's right in the middle. We'll call it good. So that's kind of a little bit of history on why 9 bars is the standard accepted pressure. So anyway, a couple little nuggets in there for you. But what is espresso? It is a roast. It is a brew method. It is crema. It is pressure. In a nutshell, that is what espresso is. Hope you guys pulled a couple things out of this. If I'm off base on anything, correct me if I'm wrong. And anyway, I love coffee. Keep drinking it. Stay classy. Peace out.